Wow, what a response to the Q&A today.
Yeah, a lot of questions.
We did. We got a lot of questions. And we're going to dive into some of them right now. Let's get right down to business.
Let's do it. Buckle up.
Oh, buckle up. Okay, so the first question that we got, the very first one, hi, how to improve internal rotation of left hip. So that's super complicated, right? So nothing that we can really say, at least especially in this one, is going to be the definite way to do it. But typically, especially on the left side, what's happening is that the left pelvis is anteriorly tipped forward, okay? And we're gonna have to do some things to reposition that pelvis. Now, also with that anterior tip, it is also having a rotational component, which is positioning the femur already in internal rotation, which is what makes it seem as though the femur is lacking internal rotation when it's really just already being internally rotated. So all we have to do is really reposition that pelvis. And when you understand that the pelvis is just in a poor position, now we just have to reposition it back out of internal rotation, and then, la-di-da, we now have that full scope of internal rotation back. So things like activating the left hamstring a lot of left hamstring strengthening, a lot of left abdominal strengthening to get it from the top end. We're doing things like left adductor to pull you over onto that left side. Left adductor is going to pull you out of that internally oriented state. And those are going to be the things that you really want to do. So get off of your right side and practice really good left stance, and that should by default give you more internal rotation, assuming there's no weird stuff, pathologies going on. We should be, more often than not, that's going to do it. There are, of course, a million different things that could throw that off, but more often than not, that's what's going on. Next question. What do you got on that? Do you have anything to add there?
You also just have to remember is that all of our anatomy is different as well. You know, there are cases where people's femurs are torted, you know,
Sure,
from development and stuff like that. So essentially, like also, yes, thinking about the pelvis on the femur, but also sometimes the femur may be positioned incorrectly within the pelvis.
That's big time stuff right there. That's a question for another day, but really good point. Our next question, we're gonna pass this one off to Mark here. The best SI joint pain exercises, he emphasizes. Thank you.
All right, beautiful. Well, hopefully you take this and I can say you're welcome. So essentially, first and foremost, you have to first determine that it is actually the SI joint that is provoking this pain, okay? And you know, there are multiple tests that you can find on the internet, and if some of those are, I believe 3 out of the 6 that are positive are going to be, you know, yes, that will determine SI joint
Sure.
pain. But is there one best exercise? No, it's more important about the sequencing of exercises, okay? So first and foremost, we have to remember that the orientation of the SI joint, we have one, you know, an aspect on this side and an aspect on the other side. In the early stages of SI joint dysfunction or any type of pain that we're having from this joint,
Right.
The sequencing is important because we don't want to differentiate that SI joint. I'm exaggerating, we don't have that much range of motion out of that joint, but essentially, I need to train when both of them are bilaterally in the same position. Okay, because if I have any of that differentiation, if I'm doing a split stance, a split squat, I'm only promoting that dysfunction,
Sure.
that anterior tilt on one side, posterior tilt on the other side. So at first, what I like to do is work in the tall kneeling position on both knees first. Okay, we're getting ground contact from the floor to our knees. Okay, and then what I like to do is sometimes I love to use the body blade. I don't know if you've had experience with the body blade, but essentially you could take these strong athletes that, you know, they are strong, but they can't even oscillate the blade, you know, for 30 seconds.
Right.
So that just shows that their resistance to fatigue is not as elite as it should be.
Right.
Because once fatigue sets into play, we're going to have global muscles kicking in for that movement, and then further we're going to have force that's going to go to joints that we don't want force to go to.
Sure.
All right, an SI joint, it basically transmits the forces from the floor up and then from our body down to the floor.
Yeah.
So that's a very important joint. So, I would first start off on working on a tall kneeling, okay, on both knees, do exercises with that, any type of, pull-off press in that position, okay. Then I would work in standing as well, okay, just to get a different feedback.
Right.
And then I would add a rotational component with it, okay, before I then start splitting my stance, because now I'm going to have the differentiation of the SI joint, and then I already need to have that resistance to fatigue, number one. I need to have that foundation of what is the stability supposed to feel like before I could differentiate that movement.
Right. There it is. SI joint. SI joint is tricky.
Mm-hmm.
It's no space there.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's quite debilitating when it's inflamed.
Yeah.
Very.
Big time. Okay. Moving right along, the next question we have is left glute med, chronic pain for 3 years in the up region. What's that? Do you know what the up region is?
I can't determine that off of that.
Okay. Okay. Left glute med, chronic pain for 3 years. When I bend more times, I got pain. Left glute med is a tricky spot. And it's interesting that you're identifying it as glute med, but I would say that your path to helping that is everything that we talked about on the how to improve hip internal rotation on the left hip. Essentially, the left glute med is a major player, especially the anterior fibers, in finding that internal rotation back in that left internal rotation, the left pelvis. That left glute med is a major player in restoring that. So if you are not in a good left internal or left stance, if you can't achieve good left stance, glute med is going to be out of position, overactive in certain places, underactive in others, and using that and restoring that should be able to restore a typical glute med issue. Obviously, again, there's a lot of things that can come into play, especially with chronic pain. But left glute med, and that if most people are not going to have good left internal rotation of that hip. And that being said, the left glute med is going to be out of position, not working properly, and just kind of funky, and could absolutely be leading to something like that. Okay. The last question we're going to cover, passing it off to Mark, we'll tag team this one a little bit. The 5 must-do stretches. And I think that what you're going to find out is that neither of us believe that there are 5 must-do stretches. Mark, take it away.
Yeah, so when I first read this question, I had a hard time thinking about one. Or the top 5 that I would use. Mm-hmm. I myself don't stretch.
Sure, and we didn't want to just throw stretches down because you asked for 5. Yeah. We want to tell you our thoughts here, real thoughts.
So first, let me just take a hamstring stretch, for example.
Okay.
And we touched upon this, and we were talking about it a little bit earlier with one of our other members. And a lot of the times when we are stretching our hamstring, what we're feeling, that tightness, is neural tightness.
Yep.
So essentially, people may be chasing the wrong thing.
Right.
In regards to how would I, myself, or Mark Drabenko, increase my own flexibility, I would go to positions in which I feel like I'm lacking any type of flexibility of that range, and create some type of tension. I will utilize the PNF principles.
Right.
But in particular, to saying you have to do this stretch, this stretch, this stretch, this stretch, this stretch, and you're going to be good. That would be a disservice if I said that.
Sure, I think that you have to address the why of the muscle being tight first. If you have a tight muscle, why is it tight?
Exactly.
If you can address that, and you've eliminated the fact that it's not neurological tightness, some sort of perceived threat, then you can stretch it. But I don't think there's anything. I think more often than not it is neurological. And personally, I don't stretch either. I never prescribe stretching, only under the most rare circumstances. The only thing that I ever stretch somewhat consistently is a posterior capsule. But it's definitely not a must-do for anybody, and I think that's the same for stretching.